Blessings and good evening. Happy Thursday, September 19th, 2024, everybody. I'm your host, the one and only Mr. LP, Stephen Sykes of Enliven Global Media, and we're sponsored by Shoe Crazy Wine. And thank you so very much for joining us today. This is one of my best times of the weekend, things that I get to be surrounded by intelligence and all these wonderful accolades from these wonderful women who just happen to also be very beautiful and talented. Today is a very important show, and it's one of those shows that uh, kind of I'm going to give the credit to Miss Walston that we were talking about this for some time and how everybody is the different issues of forgiveness and so much more and accountability and working with each other. So we're going to have a little discussion about that. But first and foremost, I want to introduce everybody before we get into the opening statement. First, let me introduce the youngest of the group, Miss Nanette Swain. Nanette Swain, how are you doing today, Queen?
I'm good. How are you? How is everyone?
Good, good, good. And so we're gonna start off with positivity. They won't let me play the music in the beginning anymore. So tell us something fun that happened for you this week.
This week? Oh God, this
Hmm.
was just been a relaxing kind of week for me. I can't
Okay.
I can't say. I mean, I'm not saying that there's nothing fun and or exciting, but it's just been relaxing.
Okay, not a problem. And the right below me, but never really below me. She's always ahead of me, Miss Victoria James. How are you doing, Queen?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for having me. Hello, Queen Walston and Queen Swain. I Something that happened positive that happened this week. My daughter is almost fully recovered from her tonsillectomy,
Mm.
and so she went back to school on Wednesday, and she's loving it. So I'm happy for her.
Good, good, good. And a more quiet peace at home. We got it. That's that. You can feel the exhale of a mother through her face and his body. Like anybody, I'm a guy, but anybody, if you can recognize, they say context clues. I'm very big on that. It's not
Mm.
what you say; it's what they're not saying.
Mm. Mm.
And anybody, yeah, I'm trying to be smart enough to recognize that if you have any common sense, you can feel the joyful energy in it. And I appreciate you for taking the time out here. And definitely not least, Miss Walston, how are you doing today?
I am well. I'm well. Something that happened fantastic this week was I kept my promise to myself. I got up at like 3:30 in the morning. I got up to pray, meditate, work out, and read. And that keeping a promise to myself is very important, and I did it. Yay.
Mhm.
All right, not a problem. So today's show, as I was alluding to earlier, first and foremost, I would not forget Raw Silk, author Tracy Harder Scott. She's going to be joining us shortly. So we want to dive deep into the complexities of accountability and forgiveness amongst women. Yes, I'm a guy that said it. So we're going to talk about how it impacts just friendships, business relationships, family dynamics, struggle with accountability and forgiveness. It's just what happens out there these days. Why is it that women often find it very difficult to forgive and move on from past hurts and let go amongst each other? When so many hold grudges for years, I still see people who fight over and make up something back in high school when you're in your 50s and 60s, while others avoid owning their faults, especially when it comes to relationships or how we deal with each other in terms of friendships, girlfriends, what have you. And perhaps more importantly, why do women care rarely call each other out? We see these shows and all these other things in this code, and I don't want to do anything, and we understand we want to support your sister and all these other different things, but right is wrong is wrong. And sometimes it's hard to call each other out, especially when it's amongst other women, family, brethren. And even if you're trying to do it, which you should be trying to do it in a proper context and how it's done. And we want to try to break that silence on diving into these hard hitting questions, exploring how accountability, forgiveness, and personal responsibility can lead to a much healthier, stronger connection and better peace within yourself so you can move on and allow growth, allow holistic positivity, holistic resolutions, and things to come in. Because if you don't let go of some of those things, other positive things can't come into you, and you're blocking your blessings. So let's get into it a little bit and things. So first and foremost, we have modified these things, and I want to let everybody know that full disclosure. Um, I don't look too ashy today, but the stores was all out of lotion and baby oil, so I try to do what I can.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
I heard there was a shortage.
yeah, there's a shortage these days. I just don't understand.
They're going to resell it. They're going to put it back on the market and resell it. It was still closed. The seal wasn't broken.
Oh, I don't understand.
I'm gonna put a bottle. I'm gonna make it by the lotion. Stop. I'm sorry. Try to add a little bit of levity to the conversation. So the first one we're going to talk about is sister code. Why women don't check each other. There's an unspoken code among women where they avoid calling each other out publicly, even though when we know something is wrong. And disloyalty to sisterhood can lead to unhealthy behaviors and attitudes that can go very unchecked and really cause some problems. So let me start off with the first thing. Why women are reluctant to correct each other, and especially in the presence of men. All of you are positive women that's had great relationships and they've experienced some challenges with men as well. So I want to let y'all drive this conversation a little bit and things, not just for me. Miss James, I'll let you go first.
Let's see. I think from my experience, the reason that women have trouble correcting other women in front of men is because it sets a precedent that two things happen. One thing that happens is you run the risk of doing so without context and possibly giving someone the impression that that person is not protected. Um, I'll use the example of covert narcissism.
Mm.
Covert narcissism is very insidious, and it often carries a victim mentality in the sense that the way to isolate your victim is to make them appear unhinged and as if they are a tyrant, when in reality they have been emotionally manipulated to their last thread. So they may lash out at you when you are asking underhanded things in order to get a reaction. Let's just use that as an example. And you lash out at your partner. I've had enough of this. You're always doing this, trying to embarrass me in front of people, blah, 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 blah. And then you say, hey, like, can you not do that in front of people? You're gonna emasculate your man or whatever the case may be. And now you have given her assailant the aha, there we go, I got her. Now, you wouldn't know that if you didn't experience it yourself or see it happen already. So if you have, then you're less likely to correct her in front of him, right? That doesn't mean you won't correct her or you won't ask her what the problem is, what's going on, get your context, and then talk to her about it. But in that example, it's better to wait and talk to your sister in private and then counsel her from there. If it really is just that, she is out of line, then you can tell her, sis, I think you could have handled that better. Or how about we try to think of some ways that you could have said that more respectfully, whatever. But to do so in public can do more harm than you think. And I think that a lot of us have seen that happen already. And so we're less likely to want to get on a soapbox or to like shine a spotlight on our sister. But that doesn't mean that we're not willing to correct her. I hope that makes sense.
What does that mean when, though, if other women and unfortunately children see this bad comment, behavior, whatever action, and they don't see any come back to that and say, hey, this is not right, and we just go along with it and then call them later, if that person is receptive to listening to alternatives, they don't. But and that correction may be made behind the scene, may or may not be made, but the other person don't see it. So everybody just sees it goes along. Oh, I guess this must be okay, and the behavior
I
is
think
not,
that the
learned.
answer to that is to, in addition to counseling behind the scenes, is also to advise your friend, and this is where accountability would come in, to apologize the way that they offended. So to come back publicly and apologize for your behavior and explain that it's not okay to behave that way and why you in the moment reacted that way. That allows for that person to be honest, vulnerable, and open in showing that this is the emotionally mature way to handle this. So then you do set that example after the fact. But I think it's important in any circumstance to avoid escalation, to step back and discuss things. In the example that I've given, there are plenty of examples of not correcting someone in front of a man, not correcting a woman in front of a man, or why you should, or whatever. There's plenty of examples, but in the example that I've given, um, I think it's important to step aside, let everyone cool down, but then also still address the issue publicly and de-escalate in that manner.
Understood. Because you see in these various channels, in these chats and shows online, social media, whatever, they'll say everything else, and then it's offended when from a. I don't want us to speak from all women or all guys, but I could say individually and speaking of others, it's frustrating where you look like the one that's the wrong, and you're clearly right, but all the women wanted to sit here, yeah, that type of thing, and not listen. But you're correct. Those are some very positive points that you made, Miss Swain.
Um, First, I think it's important to align yourself with a group of sisters who are willing to accept accountability. You form a sisterhood where you know that, listen, I'm not here to bash you, but if we're going to associate with each other, if we're going to align with each other, if we're going to be in partnership, so to speak, with each other, then we need to be able to be accountable to each other and for each other. There has to be a degree of accepting that. A lot of women don't accept that. And it's a sign of maturity. It's a definite sign of maturity if you're willing to do so. To say that you are totally immature and not accepting accountability, I'm not going to say totally, but it speaks to, from my perspective, it speaks to your womanhood and your level of maturity. Especially in this day and age that we live in. We're surrounded with the social media construct of what Black women are supposed to be looking like and sounding like these days. And it's annoying to even see or even think that this is what Black women are, when, as I alluded to you when we were in the preempt of this, this is not who we are. We've been put into this light of degradation. We Black women just don't stick together. We're always in this cat fight for power and attention. It's this always pitting one against the other, even to the point where you may have some sisterhoods who seem tight on the outside, but collectively put them together, and there's this constant competition: who looks better, who's got the best hair, who dresses better. It's this constant competition. We pit one another against each other, and I don't think that that's a healthy thing for any woman of any age to be doing. If we look back at, well, not so much when I was in school, in high school and stuff, but when I went to college, I saw it more so where, it's a clique of women over here who don't like a woman or two over here. And it's based on a perception that's been manifested over here. And so when we get into this, how do I hold you accountable? Do you know what you said? Do you know what you did? Do you know how offensive that is? We're afraid to do that because maybe we're outnumbered. Now, to the point of doing it in front of a man, I don't think doing it in front of any other individual is a constructive way of handling it. If it is definitely detrimental to the sisterhood, then it should be a conversation that is one-on-one. My perspective. It should be a conversation that is one-on-one, because most times people aren't aware of their actions and their words. It's just, they'll say, well, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It may not necessarily be who you are. It's who you project yourself to be or have been projected to be because of the lack of accountability from the outside, be it from your parents, your job, your sisterhood, your man, or even yourself. But I think you have to be mature enough to want to be in a sisterhood where you are held accountable.
Amen. I want to give a shout out. Thank you very much, Miss Sonia Holt Cartwright. Thank you, sister, for a great topic. Thank you very much. Our additional resident counselor, one of the big things I'll try to do is not just the fact that I try my best to do have positive and great research for each subject. I try to ensure that we have guests who are also who live that life, who does these things, and I want to make sure that we, as they say, don't operate without a license, and make sure that we have proper medical, psychological, physical, whatever, those who are in this. And these three women are very much into their field of work and also what they do. I apologize for the background noise. I don't know where that is, but we're working on it. But Ms. Ralston,
I'm trying to think of a scenario where it would be okay for a woman to check another woman in front of a man. And the only thing that I could possibly think is if that is that woman's partner. And even in those moments, you have to be so very careful, I believe, just because of what the Ms. James was talking about, and that was the covert narcissism. You don't know what is that called? Where you allow somebody to do something. Okay, you don't know what that person's situation is. You don't know that person's trauma. You don't know their mind state. So you have to be very, very careful, because people are very calculating and can use that to victimize another person. So you have to be careful with that. As it relates to just women having a code, I'm going to have to agree with Queen Swain and say that too often we are in competition with each other, not realizing that we don't ever have to compete with each other just because of most of these societal norms. What happens is we get often locked in our head. I can't be friends with women because they do that, they do this, they do that. Or due to insecurities and other traumas, they don't know how to have healthy relationships because they never fostered healthy relationships when they were younger. So sometimes they will try to attach themselves to more male counterparts to be seen, to be heard, to be loved and adored, than rather reach back and get their assistance from their sisters. Sisters don't know how to help each other in their traumas, in their moment, because they either try to forget, they They regress. They don't want to relive those moments of trauma, not knowing that their sister has probably suffered the same trauma also. So collectively, if we were not so scared of our truth, then perhaps we could be more unified than we are right now. But we don't want anybody to know our business. We don't want anybody to know our weakness. And the thing is, we probably all have the same weaknesses. We just have to work through those things. And you can do that as a collective group.
Very much. Yeah, we've really covered everything with the other points to discussion with that was discussing the implication of the code in terms of personal growth and accountability, and also examples of everyday life where this dynamic plays out. Before I had a couple more questions towards this, but
I
want
wanted
to
to
also
just
introduce.
add really quickly, Stephen,
Sure,
excuse me,
please.
to the point that both Miss Swain and Miss Wollaston made. Walston, I'm sorry. Um, when I was growing up, I I had this impression that women were always of like the community of women that I had around me, the friends that I had in high school, middle school, et cetera, coming up. There was only one instance in my youth where I had a frenemy,
Mm,
someone who was like what Miss Walston was talking about, where she would attach herself or wanted so desperately to be liked and adored by people that she liked that she didn't value the friendships that she had with myself and another friend of ours. And it caused a lot of tension between us. And I decided to push her aside. I said to her one day, look, you and I can't be friends if you are not going to be a real friend. And thankfully, I was able to do that. And this was junior high. I was very young. But I was able to
Mm,
do that because I already had examples of what sisterhood looked like. And in having that, I was able to foster much better friendships in high school. But when I got to college and I was out of state, oh boy, did I have to muster up all that training. Get your tears out, girl, because you're here by yourself. And you got to tell these ladies, first of all, you ain't going to talk to me any old kind of way. Okay. I respect you. You respect me. That's one. Two, find people who are on the same, uh, mindset, understanding, et cetera, as you. But it really gave me that like huge culture shock that there are a lot of women like that. That because I really didn't feel like that. I felt like they were in the minority.
mm,
I was in the minority. Women who genuinely are girls are in the minority. From my experience, I have to preface it that way because who knows what's happening? There's 8 billion people on the planet. Who knows how it is everywhere else if you ain't been there? But so for me, it was really shocking to come to that realization that I read a book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, where she talked about the sort of culture of women for a long time was to be in competition with each other for the attention of men.
mm,
Um, and so while you could find sisterhood, absolutely, there was this undercurrent of I still want to edge her out because for my survival I need XYZ from this person or I want this person. And so I can't, that's my friend but I can't let her around my husband too much, or that's my friend but like, you know,
mm,
whatever the case may be.
mm,
In the friendships that I've had, I have never once had to worry about one of my friends, and she has never had to worry about me in regards to a man of any aspect of her life. Not romantic, not platonic, not her brother, nothing. And I'm so grateful for that. I have to be objective about it in that way and say, I understand how privileged I am to have experienced that type of experience at being almost 40. That I haven't come across one of my girlfriends trying to push up on my man, or I haven't come across someone trying to keep me away from their partner, feeling like because I was single at the time that I was a threat, or some of the things that I've seen people, women encounter. So is there a code? Absolutely. That code is for protection. The code of, you watch your girlfriends drink when you're out, or you never let your friends leave with somebody you don't know. Or the I'm on a blind date and this guy's starting to scare me. Let me text you real quick something and you call me and let me know there's an emergency. There's absolutely a code. Is there a code about not addressing somebody in a woman in front of a man? I haven't heard it. There might be one, but I haven't heard it personally. But there are, whatever your experience has been with it as a woman, it may be the reason that you're reluctant to do so. So I don't think it's a nefarious setup kind of thing where it's like, I'm not going to say that this person is wrong in front of in front of a guy because of girl code. I think it's more nuanced than that.
Gotcha. No, definitely. I want to introduce the other lady in the room who was kind of joining us. She serves as a special investigation counselor for individuals in the entertainment industry. So she came in late because she just got finished having a conversation in New York. Ms. Ross Silk, how you doing? Can you hear us, Queen?
Can you hear
I can hear you now. Yes, ma'am.
what I said, right?
No, I didn't hear what you said.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody?
Good evening.
Good.
I guess
Good.
I shouldn't hear what you said.
How are you, queens?
Good.
I'm well, and yourself?
Doing good, Queen.
How was your counseling session?
Good. Good to pop in.
Mm-hmm. So the subject,
You know what?
was
I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to the queens here.
The subject title, I know you may not have gotten the chance to catch up on all of it, but we were talking about the fact of the overall subject of accountability and forgiveness, breaking the code of silence. And there's several aspects and dynamics within this and the minutiae of it all. But the first question was about the sisterhood code, why women not checking each other, not necessarily about in front of men, but just being honest with each other. And the previous queens have made some powerful points. I was wondering if you shortly, if you could, what are your thoughts regarding that, on that particular question or topic?
So the only thing that I could say is that they don't call me raw silk for nothing, because you already know me. I'm truthful and transparent with my sisters. I'm a hard friend. I am a hard friend, because if you don't want truth, if you want me to sugarcoat stuff for you, if you want me to feel warm and make you feel warm and fuzzy when I know you're making a fool out of yourself, then I'm not the friend for you. I'm always going to be truthful with my friends, and I expect my friends to be truthful with me. I think that there's a way to check your sisters to make sure that their crown is not sliding off of their head without, you know what I'm saying, dogging them out and things of that nature. But I just really do, for me, that's a code of being my friend, that we have to be able to be honest with each other and to be truthful with each other. You already know, Mr. LP, if you don't want the truth, then don't ask my opinion. Don't ask me, because if you ask me, then I'm gonna give it to you directly. I think that if more of us practice that type of behavior, because I don't like fake friends. I don't do fake. I don't like fake pretentious conversation. That just takes too much work. Okay. I'm that type of friend. I want to be there for you. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be that shoulder to cry on one time. You can't come back to me another time about the same problem, the same issue with your man that we done already dialogue for and drank a glass of wine over and cried together or whatever, because then I'm just going to be like, okay, you really don't want to hear the answer from me. You just want me to cuddle you and make you feel good. And I'm not going to do that.
Yes, ma'am. Asked and answered. Okay. The next part of this, and I'm going to and I also want to give credit to this to Miss James. She accurately phrased some of these things a little bit better, understood where I was going, and educated me on this, like, do it this way. No, but no, she's not like that at all. Bruises aside, she educated me on the best way to articulate this and recognize the work that and the research that I was putting into this. And I want to thank you publicly, Queen, on this. Thank you so much. The other one is moving forward, accountability, forgiveness, and growth. And I want to frame it in such a way that for women to grow emotionally, we must first embrace accountability and forgiveness. Only by recognizing our own faults as women. I mean, I'm sorry, not me, but women recognizing your own faults and working through them. They can build better, stronger relationships with others and for themselves. And forgiveness requires emotional vulnerability, which is a very big issue in our communities, especially communities of color for women. There's a lot of different aspects with this, and I'm going to move around, but I want to, if we could stay within the microcosm of this one statement, talk about the importance of emotional maturity and self-reflection within that phrase. Silk, I'm going to start off with you.
So I think it goes back to, I think a couple of weeks ago when I, and the other queen was on there, and I made the comment that most women are co-conspirators in the crimes that they say were committed against them. Okay, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Looking at self-reflecting and saying, okay, yeah, this person did this to me, or that, but what did I allow them to do, and how did I contribute to that? What message did I send? And especially, I don't know, Mr. LP, if you're talking in the vein of just relationship, man and woman relationship, or whatever type of relationship,
just
or
overall.
overall. Okay. And so I just think that even with our friends, okay, if we keep giving them passes to use us over and over again, and we don't hold them accountable for that, then we're a co-conspirator in that. Okay, or whatever. It's kind of like the person that asks you to borrow $50 and then they never pay you back, but you see them shopping on Amazon and everything, and then as soon as something happens, they come back and ask you, hey, can I borrow some money? What are you holding them accountable for? You know what I'm saying? So I just think that, again, those type of conversations for me, would be that, to be truthful and transparent, number one. Okay. And see, what did I do wrong in this? How did I contribute to this? And I think the perfect thing for me that I contribute to this, especially the hardest pill, is when it comes down to family, right? Because a lot of us, we keep toxic family members and things around strictly because they have that word family on the end of their name, and we think that some of the behaviors that they display and the treatment that they do, it's okay because they're family, and it's not. And I think a lot of us end up punishing ourselves because of that, and saying it's okay for me to love you over there, okay, but not in my space.
Exactly.
Understood. Miss Walston.
Okay, so emotional maturity and emotional regulation. Emotional maturity deals with the ability to be objective and understand, although your feelings are valid, the other person that there might be a conflict with, they also have valid emotions. So in my understanding, even if I am angry, even if I am upset, even if I don't like something that somebody else does, I need to have the maturity enough to understand that they are also in their state of their own right. I don't have to agree with them. I can respectfully disagree, But I have to understand that everybody is allowed to live in their own reality, even if it's not real. It's kind of like this. I have 4 best friends. I know which best friend to call when I desperately need them. I'm not going to call the girlfriend that's going to be late. I'm not going to call the girlfriend that's late up with her man. And I love all of them, but I respect the fact that we have been friends for a while and we know each other. We know each other's flaws, imperfections. So when you're emotionally mature, I'm not saying you have somebody treat you like a welcome mat, but you need to be able to welcome the fact that they're not you. And you cannot have an expectation that people be you. Women usually balance out, are very emotional, but men are usually logical. One good thing that a woman can do is balance out the emotion and the logic by thinking about this in a mature way. So at the end of the day, I believe that people have to recognize that everybody is different. Understand what you will and will not tolerate in a relationship and know if that's a good fit in the friendship. The regulation part, self-awareness is probably the scariest thing in the world, because when you're self-aware, you can't run away from it. You can lie to everybody else, but once you become self-aware, that's it. And at that moment, you have to hold yourself accountable. And this is one thing that I do know about the creator. You're going to hold yourself accountable, or you're going to be accountable in some sense, one way or the other. Because when you're aware that your attitude is nasty, when you're aware that you did that on purpose to manipulate something, when you're aware that you have done something out of malice intent, it comes back. It comes back and it keeps repeating itself until you say, you know what? This is who I am. This personality trait might not change overnight, but this is who I am. And I need to guard myself and guard others so that I don't let these bad flaws or characteristics impede on somebody else. That's a lot of emotional maturity. And a lot of people are not going to reach that, because that means they have to hold themselves accountable, be supportive, and then not point blame to others or project their own personal issues. So there's a lot to unpack in that.
Understand. Miss Swain?
Um,
I see. I see the steam.
how do I address it? I'm going to address this from the perspective of, again, being in a sisterhood of about 5 or 6 of us. We all grew up together. We're all different ages, but we all kind of grew up together in my home church here in Harlem. So we've known each other collectively, between all of us, amongst all of us, I want to say at least 100 years collectively. So I'm going to cite an incident as it relates to these sisters. One of us is, all of us are over 50, but we do have one amongst us who's a little bit immature in not accepting accountability for her actions and her words. And I believe I've known her the longest. And there have been several things that I've watched her do over a period of time where others are like, well, that's just who she is. That's just who she is. Let it go, because that's just who she is. I don't believe in that's just who she is. I personally don't believe in that. We have characteristics, yes, but I don't believe that we have characteristics that allow us or that can afford us to be, that's just who she is, because there's no growth there. If we keep, that's just who she is. That's just who she is. So with this particular sister, I'm of the policy, 3 strikes you're out. We grown. So after your 3rd strike with me, while everyone else is, that's just who she is. I have to call you to the carpet. It takes me back to maturity, emotional growth, the ability to be able to speak to each other honestly without sounding like, we're chastised. It's not about chastising. It's about, well, how much do you want to grow? Do you acknowledge that this is not really who you are because you can be better? If I tell you that that's just who you are, then you'll never grow. I'm looking for you to grow. So not necessarily pointing a finger, but making you aware of what the problem is that keeps you from growing, instead of going, well, that's just who you are. And a lot of it we also have to understand is most people work from their insecurities, from childhood or whatever happened to them in their lifetime. They work from their insecurities, and allowing them to fester in those insecurities without showing them that there's a realm of them, there's a part of them that can grow outside of that realm of your insecurity. I think we do them a disservice with the continuation of, that's just who she is. I would like to see us as Black women in straightening each other's crown, not just, well, oh my God, that's just who she is. No, I don't believe that that's just who you are. You weren't born that way. You weren't taught that. Circumstances may have prevailed that put you in that mindset. But now, how do you get out of those circumstances? It could be from your childhood, up under your parents, boyfriend, girlfriend, relationships, school, jobs, or whatever. We kind of develop this thick skin thing, where we can, I'm just going to let that go. No. Again, I'm a 3 strikes you're out person. I'm like Silk. I'm going to come at you hard, whether you like it or not. The idea is I'm not here to chastise you. I'm not here necessarily to criticize you. I'm telling you what the problem looks like from the outside looking in the hopes that you will find a way to outgrow it and find a viable solution where now that you're finding your own and to outgrowing it, you will fix it, because you can't go around throughout your whole life being, that's just who she is. It's not a thing. It's just not a thing.
Understood. Miss James.
Yeah, growth and
Excuse me.
self-reflection is vital to emotional maturity. It's something that I think a lot of people are afraid to do, because confronting the things that you believe are who you are, without really digging into the why, is something that scares people. And being reactionary can be very stressful and detrimental to you health wise. I think a lot of us don't really consider that. We just think that it's normal because we have existed in a state of, tension and survival for so long that we don't know what it's like not to feel that way. And even that can be scary. Scary confronting your demons, so to speak. Scary to admit that what you believed to be the truth is not. I recall my first 6 months of therapy, and they were heavy. They were hard because I had to relive my childhood. I had to relive my teenage years, which were very, whew, Lord, crazy. And I had to confront the why in the way that I behaved, in the way that I felt, in the way that I reacted, because I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt, and I didn't like who I had become. But that takes a level of self-reflection on its own before you get to therapy. It takes even knowing that or admitting that to yourself to be able to say, to be able to get past the this is who I am.
Mhm.
So that person who feels that way, who says that all the time, is really telling you, I am afraid. That's what they're saying. Because they feel ganged up on in the moment, right? And so the cop out is, this is who I am. Stay back.
Or when they say to know me is to love me, or that type of thing.
Yeah, some sort of iteration of that, yes. It really is doing this. They just putting the wall up because it's too difficult to really confront the fact that there are a lot of things they don't really like about themselves.
Mhm.
And when I learned it for myself, yes, absolutely, Sonia, defense mechanism. So when I learned it for myself, I began to see it in the women closest to me, that this is where I got it from.
Hmm.
But it also gave me an added layer of empathy to say, okay, I've done the work and I know that it takes doing the work to get over here. So I know that either A, this person's too afraid to take that step. And so again, my emotional maturity has to step in to say, I don't have to meet them where they are emotionally, right? I don't have to stoop to that. But I do have to give them the grace and understanding that it is difficult. That doesn't mean you have to deal with them all the time. I'm not saying that, but it does mean that I have to say, all right, don't stress yourself out trying to fix it because you're not going to do it. But like to say, all right, we're just going to table this. And I want you to take some time and just think about it. Just think about what I said. You don't have to say that to me. And
Understood.
and when we come back, when I see you again, don't get mad if I bring it up, okay? Because I do want to talk to you about it. Or like, I want us to be able to have conversations without it turning into this. Because, this is because I love you, or whatever you think that you need to disarm the the wall. If we can, instead of trying to like push past the wall, because if a wall's made of brick and stone, you're not going to be able to push through the wall. You have to chip away at it. So whatever thing that you need to do, or whatever, the people that you're involved with, you usually know them intimately enough to understand how they move, and just say, I'm asking you this because I love you, or I know that you don't want to hurt me, or whatever it is that you need to say. There's always a trigger. And this is I wouldn't use the term, I was going to say this is positive manipulation, but I think it's more disarming. It's not manipulation, because manipulation is insidious. But like being able to have that, I guess maybe forethought is the word that I'm looking for, and just understanding and grace for people, especially when they are very clearly reacting from a place of trauma or hurt, or because anger is just, it's fear.
Mm,
It's usually very often fear. And we use anger to push people away.
that's a good
So
point.
usually when I see somebody get irrationally upset, I don't even bother with the calm down, what's your problem? I just sit there and I look. I just watch them and I observe and I nod. And even just doing that, even in you remaining calm, not giving them the like disingenuous, I'm being calm, I don't know why you're acting like, no, not that. It's just very much, okay.
Mm,
hmm Just
okay.
genuinely listening will disarm the the survival mode, instinct, tension, anger, etc. It usually disarms it, and they start to see that you're not going to feed into it, and suddenly it's like, well, I was just saying this and that. It went from rah 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 to, this, and then it goes to, well, why aren't you saying anything? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you were supposed to fight with me, stuff like
Exactly.
that. And so eventually you can get to a place of, listen, I understand you're upset. If it was because I said whatever, whatever, let me explain. Or if we're not going to get anywhere today, I don't want to fight with you. Whatever you have to do, but you have to be there in order to see it in other people. You can't just force them to want to relax or force them to go to therapy, because a lot of people need to do that, but you just can't. You have to want
Go.
it.
Gotcha. One of the things, I laugh because I said within this part, but we covered a lot of it where we were going to discuss, highlight the power of forgiveness as a tool for personal growth, exploring the vulnerability of, and how it's often misunderstood as weakness. You have touched as that. Why, particularly in those women, especially women in power, struggle with forgiveness due to a fear of fearing weak or looking weak, whatever the case may be, and also societal's push for women to always stand strong instead of choosing reconciliation. Um, y'all have all touched all of those different points fully. I'm going to switch into the left lane a little bit. In a 3-lane highway, I'm gonna get in the middle lane a little bit here. Um, so uh, lack of accountability. I'm jumping around a little bit in relationships. In relationships, some women struggle to take responsibility for their role when things go wrong, often shifting blame. We always hear about, well, he did this, or so and so did this, that, and the other, but always shifting it to the men, and then it becomes whatever. You'll see in conversations where, not necessarily in the dating world, but just even in just general conversation, and they would say, well, why this? And then when a single man, an individual person, man, or a group of men may say, okay, we're trying to tell you, then you can't get 10 seconds in without, you can't get 10 seconds in without the facade of, we're gonna stand strong and men do this, this, and this, and then you go into this whole litany of things. You try to explain and tackle one or two at a time, and then they tell you you're talking too long or whatever. It's crazy. The lack of accountability can prevent, as we talked about here, growth and understanding, not just a romantic, but also a friendship and family dynamics. Um, in reference of time, if we could try to keep this within 90 minutes, 90 seconds to 2 minutes, explore why women have the difficulty of accepting blame, particularly when they feel pressure to appear perfect. Um, I'll just leave it at that. I'll start back. I'll go back around with you, Miss James.
I think appearing perfect, or the facade of having it all together, can cause a lot of stress and defensiveness in someone who feels like they've checked the boxes and they're doing everything right. Um, and that whatever hardness that they've developed in the road to getting to that, whatever iteration of perfection that is, can lead them to feel like any flaw is weakness. And so what ends up happening is there will be, whatever I've done is reactionary, and it's just, you shouldn't have done XYZ, or you said XYZ, so I said this. And sure, that might be true. But our choice in how we react is ours. And I think that's where the accountability comes in. So why does it happen? Because I've certainly been a victim of this. I've certainly done this in my life. And still do. Why does it happen that we cannot accept blame? There will be times where in the moment I don't want to. I'll just be honest. In the moment I don't want to say it because I want my feelings. I want to be upset. I feel like I am owed this, and then I can take the moment to be, to get it out and to calm down and then come back. That is so important. Even if you have I guess strayed from what would be a healthy way of handling things, you should be able to come back and be able to regroup. But that's not always permitted in certain social settings, in certain environments, in certain cultures, even just like nuclear cultures. Maybe in your household, the elders don't have to apologize. Or maybe the men don't have to apologize. Or maybe nobody is accountable for themselves. Or maybe in your workplace, they don't have any 3 strikes for you. You got 1 time. Whatever the case may be, you might not be able to do that. So now you're on defense. And now you're like, well, I have to make excuses and I have to try to figure out how I'm not wrong. So depending on where you stand, I think that self-preservation is usually the reason that people lack accountability.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Silk.
I think some of what Miss James said, I agree with. I think it's kind of like twofold for me, because I just think like when you said have to be perfect, something like that. I just think that historically, and especially as Black women, we didn't have time not to be perfect. Okay, we didn't have time not to you know what I'm saying, take accountability and do all of these things. And I think that sometimes gets us in trouble, because we were always, I know from our household, we had to be strong. We had to, make sure this house worked regardless of whatever, I even watched like the strength of my grandmother and the strength of, my mother, and my grandfather was present, and my grandfather worked and he was the breadwinner and he came home, but my grandmother ran the household. She had to be that for the kids while he did. So I think some of that is just historically in us. I agree with her with the accountability that sometimes you just want your moment. But then the other part of that is that sometimes it could be twofold. Sometimes it could actually not be your fault. The end result may be how you react to it, but there could be some contributing factors that made you decide, you know what I'm saying, the decision that you made or the action that you did. And of course, again, historically, we don't get an opportunity to explain those things out. We don't get an opportunity to say, well, I did this because, and I know a lot of people will say, well, you're only responsible for your action, but sometimes there are contributing factors that other people contribute to get the reaction that they get, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, ma'am. That does. That does. Miss Walston, I see your eye flickering here.
I think I look at it from this point of view that some women don't take blame, and then I'll just put it all on. I'll say I think that sometimes that when we get into these relationships, we don't really examine our intent. So we can see every red flag there is, but there's something in our subconscious that makes us think that this is going to be better. So we don't feel like we need to take the blame because we have the intent to make the necessary changes so this person can be a better person than what they are. And when it fails, it's not our fault because they are the exact person who we were dating or who we wanted to get with, who showed these characteristics, but we ignored them. And now we want to play we want to play victim because now we've gotten this result from this relationship that we didn't have a good intention with it in the first place. Sometimes we don't go into relationships with it being a shared union of being together, that we ignore things like you should know if he's cussing out his mama that he's probably going to cuss you out, or if he doesn't like to work or is missing a couple of days of work to lay up with you. There are certain things that I think we ignore because we want to fix them, or we feel like, oh, it'll change. It's okay. And moreover, some of us just want to have a man, so we will just make whatever preliminaries for that man, just so that we can be happy for that time until we get pushed out of that space, and then it's going to be all his fault because he cheated on us, he treated me like this, he did all these things, not knowing that we had these signs early before we got into these relationships. And I'm just talking about a whole different perspective of that. Okay.
Gotcha. Miss Swain?
I don't even know how to address it. Are we talking in terms of the woman feeling like she has to be perfect in a sisterhood or perfect in a relationship?
Well, I don't want it's that's just using the example. The whole question is exploring why women may feel have difficulty accepting blame. Let's say, and this may be a jaundice or imperfect example, but I want to try to keep it in a reflective point of view. Let's say she is cooking dinner, has a family, and she just cooks whatever. Okay. And people donated, gave money, brought supplies, whatever she may have asked, so it wouldn't be all on her on that aspect. But she cooked, and then you got 2 or 3 people that are allergic to this, peanut, vegan, reasonable requests. And instead of just saying, "Oh, you know what? I forgot to ask," apology. No, I cooked this great dinner and for everybody. You weren't here cooking, blah, blah, blah. You should be appreciative. And no one said they wasn't. But it's just automatically what goes into that. And Ms. Holt Cartwright pointed out defense mechanism, but it's still accepting to say, and it's not saying blame as in to the same level of like I crashed the car or burned the house, but accepting saying, you know what, okay, my bad. Just something simple as that. And they can't do that. So I'm looking at it.
You sound exactly like a man talking, because that made to me, I'm sorry, Queens, I didn't mean to over talk you, but I'm just gonna give you my opinion. That sounds dumb as hell. Okay, because I mean, for real, that analogy that you use is some man thing that you just made up to justify your point, because that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. If I'm cooking dinner, if I'm cooking dinner in my house, I'm pretty much aware of who's allergic to what or whatever. If I invite you over to dinner to my house, I'm inviting you, so I'm pretty much well prepared of who's vegan and who's not. However, if you just happen to drop by for dinner, then whatever's on the stove, you're more than welcome to. If you're allergic to it, don't eat it.
No, hold on. No one's saying that. Okay, hold on.
I think but, in terms of perfection from a woman and or a man, not that we set our standards too high. You should always maintain your standards, but I think our expectations, which can be totally different from your standards, I think we set our expectations too high as to say perfection. What's perfection? There's no one perfect. In family, job, personal relationships, there's no perfect person at all. There was a saying, let's see if I can remember it. Especially when you're in a love relationship or a personal, intimate relationship, you kind of love that person, that imperfect person, perfectly. What does that mean? You understand what the faults are. You understand that, they're not 100% of who you think they should be, because we have this 100% of what a man should be, or what a man has 100% of what he believes a woman should be based on a previous experience or what his mother or what her father was to him or her. And so for them, that's that perfect relationship. But perfection is individual. Excuse me. It's an individual thing. Again, there's no such thing as a perfect person. Not here on earth, anyway. There's no such thing as a perfect person. We're never going to find a perfect person. But if we understand, if we go into a relationship understanding and knowing that this is what I'm getting, I've got this expectation of 100%, but he or she is at least 90%. Can I do without the other 10% and watch them grow into that? Yeah. But if we have the 100% and we won't concede on, I want 100%, based on this is how my daddy taught me, this is how my mama taught me, this is how, my ex-wife or my previous girlfriend. Well, if that is the case, especially when you're saying in terms of exes, if that is the case, then why aren't you with that person back with that person in the first place? Why are you here accepting the 90% if that's all I have to give? If you explain to me from the outset what your expectations are, because again, standards for me are different from expectations. I've got a standard, but my expectations are off the chart.
We're going to get into that.
If you tell me what it is you're looking for, then I can tell you, well, you know what? I got 90% of what you're looking for. If that's good enough, then we can work with each other. And then you teach me, show me how to do the 10% that you feel that I'm lacking without bashing.
So I have a question, because I just want to dial back, because the question that you asked, just for me, like, why can't women accept taking the blame? That's just like generalizing all women. They're like, you got to explain that to me. What you meant by that?
Okay, hold on. Let me go back a step further. When your response, I understand what you're saying, and when you said it's just a typical man or whatever. But see, this is where, and not saying you, but this is where men was, and what I was explaining earlier, and I'm not sure you were on at the time, where we would try to explain a situation. You've heard these situations before, seen these situations before. Oh, and from your perspective, yes, you obviously be prepared, see this, that, the other. But sometimes in a lot of situations, not. And what I try to explain is that we can't look at everything from within our own sphere and within our own bubble. So to you, it may sound like a typical man, this, that, and the other, but these are situations that actually do happen. And not necessarily that situation, but when we present something, oh, you just being a man and blah, 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 blah. And then that gets that pushback, that defensive mechanism, that's all this stuff, where then it's like, okay, never mind. We try to explain, but then here it is, don't listen, or at least take the moment to process what we're having. And then when you go to the question about explore why women may have difficulty accepting blame. Now, I'm not saying the women in this present panel, and I'm not saying the women as a whole, all Black women or any particular culture group. What I'm saying that in general, there are at times where women will maybe flip it and say, I'm going to push it off. And it's not necessarily to another man. It could be to another person, a coworker, or whatever. And Ms. James accurately pointed out, not necessary to this, but it could be filtered through the lens of all this conversation, is that at that time, I want to be in my feelings. I want to express my hurt. But then when you take a step back and dial back, you can see, okay, how this could be interpreted, how this could be misconstrued, and when we go from there. So I understand.
You're saying we don't self-reflect. Is that what you're saying? So you're saying we don't self-reflect after we have made a mistake? Is that what you're saying?
That's what it sounds like.
It may not be even an aspect of self-reflect, because that does happen. You can take the time out and go with it, or it could be something similar right in that moment that when someone say, hey, no, it wasn't that situation, it was this, and it wrong, but I'm going to sit here and defend my stance no matter what, because I don't want to sit here and say that I'm wrong. And some people are so hardened, and some people are so hardened because of whatever life situation, and you may be valid in having that reason to have a hardened stance, but at that particular second or moment, you're wrong. If I sit there and,
okay, so is that a woman? Is that a female trait, or is that something from observation? Yeah, because it sounds like that's a human trait.
It's a human trait.
It's a human trait. But I'm saying that I'm trying to stay within the focus of
women. Okay.
Right.
So the generalization of women not accepting blame.
Okay.
Right. Let's deal with it from there because
that's okay.
You said
what happens is always men, but we never have that conversation for women.
But you said you're not trying to generalize women. But then you did. Women.
I'm saying.
Hold on. You open the door. Once you open the door, hold it open. Be courteous enough to let the people pass through.
Right. I'm just saying that the sentence was not in that
women not accepting the blame, I think, is too general. Again, it's a human characteristic for most people, even if they know they're wrong, not to admit that they're wrong. And it may not be out of trauma. It just may be out of pride.
Right.
Or oops, my bad, but I'm not going to let you know that that's oops, my bad. Accepting the blame, this whole trend comes back to emotional maturity. Being able to accept the blame, being able to be accountable, being able to, to recognize what's going on with you as a person is based on your degree, your level of emotional maturity. Just because you get old don't mean you're mature.
No, very much so.
We can grow old and never be mature. I know some grown children, and I'm not talking about my children. I'm talking about some grown adults who are still immature in thought and mind. So to the point of accepting blame, that I think takes dialogue. What am I to accept blame for? Case in point, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put my business out here. My son and I, we have a very estranged relationship. When I say estranged, it's mind-boggling because it's been about 20 plus years where I've been trying to figure this out. And I said to him that, without, trying to make him feel bad, I said, since you got married, he's been married 20 something years. I said, since you got married, our relationship has been, I have no words for it. But I told him, I said, I'm at the breaking point because I want to understand what happened. I just know that it started when you got married. And his reply was, well, you have to accept the blame for what happened. So now my thing is, if I'm going to accept the blame, if you expect me to accept the blame, you have to tell me what I'm accepting the blame for. Come to the table, put it on the table, tell me what the problem is. Because from where I'm sitting as your mother, I see it being on your end more so than my end. And I'm saying that to say, in his 20 plus something years of being married, we've gone from, hey, mom, how you doing? I love you too. You can hear crickets. You can hear crickets. And I addressed this with him last week, and I'm like, I just want to understand where the lack of communication or where the total disconnect came in. Because for you to say, I have to accept my part in this, when I'm trying to get you to communicate with me, I'm not feeling that. So the end of it came to, well, it's not you, it's me. All right, let's go from there. Because see, the blame may not necessarily be with the person who's you keep saying has to accept the blame. The blame may be with the person who won't tell you what the problem is. If I don't know what the problem is, I can't address it.
Very much so. First of all, My prayers to you and your son. Pray that can heal, because that's always could be very challenging. He did not articulate that very well. What I hear, the better phrase I would say, on the outside looking in, obviously, is that when we come back to the conversation that you both have kindly and did it in a peaceful manner, and I appreciate that. When you have a situation and you try to say, okay, you know what, I could have expressed this better, or I feel like there's some aspects of this that you didn't accept. Why this has happened? I accept mine, but I feel like you may be too stubborn, too prideful, too whatever. All those things that you articulated, why it did not work. I don't want to confuse the fact that blame and accountability is not homogenous. They're two different things, and from a Ms. Walston and Ms. James could probably say it better, but from a mental aspect, and then those who are in the spiritual world, pastors and consultants, can understand that there are two different things. They're often sometimes conveyed in the same sentence, but it's not the same, and that's where the trouble comes in. Ms. James, I want you to get your thoughts in this.
I had already stated mine.
Oh, okay, got you. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Forgive me. We got all of y'all articulated, how it could how examples of how women deflect. Well, let me go back. Discuss negative impact how it can have on personal growth of relationships and things. Can we give a short example each from a woman's perspective? Because I'm not a woman. I didn't stay at the Holiday Inn last night, and I didn't join a Tyler Perry movie. So I'm not going to say I'm a woman, but bad joke, I know. How women deflect responsibilities in relationships. And I want to say, and I'm asking that in the phrase from that, hi, ladies, this is from a woman's perspective. This is how what you said, this is how, or some examples. If you're in a friendship, counseling, consulting, whatever, here are some examples that you may not see that you have done, or you're seeing, hey, this is how women may deflect a relationship. Here's an example that you may or may not have done, but here's an example so you can internalize. Here's a lesson. So when you go back into a situation, you may not commit these same mistakes. In the same phrase of when you tell a child, hey, this is how you made this is how this kid messed up with drugs. Obviously, not saying that kid that did drugs, but this is what happens. So when you come presented with these situations, how to avoid. So it's in the same reflection towards a discussion to another woman. How would you give an example of women deflect responsibilities in a relationship? If you can
How to avoid deflecting responsibility? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. What are some examples of how women deflect responsibilities in a relationship? If you can give an example or two.
Stephen, I need you to do that again. You said how can women deflect? Can you give us an example of what you're talking? Give me so I can just make sure.
Okay, I don't want to be disingenuous because I'm not a like I said.
Can we get into character just so I can understand? Because I'm trying to understand how you're saying how do we deflect?
So if I'm a woman and I'm a woman sitting here talking to her girlfriend about and she says, you want me to answer as a friend, or you want me to answer as a coach? She says, okay, a coach. So she'll say, okay, girlfriend, you instead he came home, he was tired, and he asked you to, could you pick up, I don't know, could you drop off the mail and pay this bill while he's gone because he was going to be out of town? He comes back and it wasn't done and something got turned off. Okay. So so he comes in and he's upset about it, not raging, but he's upset, babe, why this? Well, you should have handled it anyway, and blah, 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 instead of, and you deflect the responsibility on him instead of saying, you know what? And where you could sit there and say, you know what? Instead of saying, again, not word blame, but accountability, you know what? I messed up. Sorry, whatever. Just different situations, and there's a plethora of them.
I don't know about y'all, but Stephen is killing me tonight. He is just absolutely, absolutely
It sounds like
killing me
a
tonight.
reiteration of examples of accountability and blame again.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Right. Exactly.
I'm sorry. Say that, Ms.
Exactly.
James. I'm sorry, Ms. I'm sorry. It jumbled up, so it showed up by both of y'all saying at the same time. So I'm sorry. Please say that again, Ms. James.
That
I didn't hear
deflection of responsibility sounds like an example of lacking accountability. So it's kind of the same thing we've already addressed.
Okay.
I kind of agree.
But even further than that, it just sounds like, I don't know, to me, and maybe because I'm jumping in this conversation late, but it just seems like, and this is just me because I love you, it seems like you got a whole bunch of women issue things going here tonight, because the things that you're talking about are just human characteristics, period. I don't understand about the woman, the whole bill thing or whatever. I don't see how that's deflected anything. If you say you're the man of the house and you're responsible for the bills and she messed up, it goes back to what Miss James said. It's just accountability. Drop the ball. It seems like you're trying to say something without saying something or whatever. And it's to me, it's driving me absolutely nuts. No, I'm just telling you how I feel. Okay,
no,
and stuff, because the
that.
queen. The queen in the corner, Miss Swain, I think it is, she said it. Okay, first of all, in any relationship, you should have truthful and transparent conversations. You should already know what your negotiables are. You should already know what you're not going to tolerate, what your standards are, whatever. The problem is, if it's a physical relationship, most people, not just women, fall into lust before they fall into love. Okay, and so they start backwards and don't have conversations. Or you get someone who says, well, I'm really not looking for a relationship, and you think that you're going to change him into having a relationship by wifing him down, by cooking and giving your wife away and all of this thing, and then you're mad when it doesn't happen. It all falls into accountability. It falls into the accountability of what you're accountable for, because no matter what relationship it is, whether it be an emotional relationship, a friendship, or whatever, you cannot change the rules of engagement once you started on a certain path. It causes confusion, it causes chaos, and then somebody feels shortchanged. If you have those conversations, I think Ms. James said it earlier when she said, I'll tell you, you can't treat me this way. I won't allow you to treat me this way, or I'm out. If we have those conversations in the beginning, it is. But to me, tonight, you just going off the gamut. It's just like, you sound like anti-woman tonight to me. And I know that's not who you are, because most of the things that you're saying are human characteristics, period.
Okay, hold on. Let me jump in here. You just earlier
without a license.
Hold on. You just answered. I don't think y'all realized, you just answered my question, what I was asking for. Okay. When you sat there and said about how, you do this, but then
I didn't understand your question.
Okay, but okay, and that could be fair. And I accept responsibility in that. But the and I will work on rephrasing for the future. But in what you gave me clear example, 3 of them, about how you were doing this, and then the rules of engagement you change, or something, example down the line, you didn't have responsibility, what have you. Those are the things where you deflect the relationship, where as a woman maybe consulting as a friend or as a coach, and those different things. So, or sometimes like when people say, I acted this way because my friend upset me earlier. Okay, we get that, and I understand that this is a human trait that everybody go through. But the problem, what happened is, in a lot of conversations, it becomes, well, when you try to explain something, well, but men do this too, blah blah blah, and then it shifts away versus staying on point. So that's where they're coming from. When you shift the focus on the partner, or when you play the victim, you gaslighting, those situations, or like, oh, woman cheats, and he says, babe, whatever, why? Well, I wouldn't have cheated if you would have been home more.
Okay, so are we talking? I'm still confused because it sounds like we're kind of.
But you answered the question. All of you answered
It sounds like we're kind of conflating a lot of concepts here, from accountability to responsibility to blame to fault, or fault to blame. So maybe we need to distinguish between, we've done the accountability, the responsibility. Maybe we need to distinguish between the fault part of it and the blame part of it, because fault is basically some kind of defect or imperfection, as we were talking about perfection. Blame is now you're pointing a finger at someone and saying it is your fault. But what is the fault? Okay, so you used the point about cooking dinner, and they should know better. True, they should know better. But is it a fault or just a misunderstanding? Or are we looking to, or are we seriously looking to point a finger at the fact that maybe they forgot or they misunderstood, or whatever the case is? It all goes back to knowing who your partner is before you get into the relationship. Sister said it, I believe it was Miss Silk said it, you know, people fall in lust before they fall in love. People fall in lust before they fall in like. It's just a matter of, oh, biceps, triceps, calves, breast, butt, you know, and it's a lust thing. And it's a given from both sides, from male and female. Our eyes see before our minds engage in, can I deal with this? Or I'm looking at this perfect specimen, or what we deem a perfect specimen of a human being, but we never get to the mindset of the person. What was that old saying? Years ago, Silk, I'm sure you know it. You have to engage my mind before you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yes.
You need to engage my mind before anything else. And if you can't get me up here, you will never get me anyplace else. It just won't happen. We get into this, oh, he's cute, I think I can live with that. But then once you get home, the he or the she is like, well, damn, if that's where your head is, you know, that's what you think. Because the initial is a visual. It's a straight visual. When I was younger, visual was a thing. As I'm older, visual does not work for me. I need to know you can. I need to know that you can engage my mind. If you can't meet me on a level up here, then you can't meet me any place else. It's just not going to work. Because when it's all said and done, and all that lust has worn off, and they no longer are wearing you know, their natural hair, they're wearing wigs for the most part, or weaves for the most part, or he or she is now toothless and got a gut hanging out in front of them, looking like they're 10 months pregnant and way past delivery. What do you do then? Are you still engaged with them? Or is it, well, I wouldn't be out here cheating if you didn't do. I wouldn't be out here. I would have cooked your meal. It would have been hot if you had come home. I would have done this with the kids if you hadn't done so. I would have. Are we on the same page? Are we even in the same book? Let alone on the same page.
But same library, very much. I totally agree with you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we've addressed some of it already, about the ripple effect, you know, family, friends, and beyond. And the way I want to go with this is, I'm sorry. First of all, Mr. Cartwright, thank you very much. No problem. We appreciate it. Greetings to this panel very much, so much. And then also Cut from GG's Cartoons. Hey, thank you so very much. I pray, you know, go from there. But like y'all gave, but both of y'all gave some good examples. But I want to go from a little bit a different direction, you know, in terms of personal conflicts. Where in the past, We see where there may have been a conflict issue, and obviously it can apply to both sides, but I want it from a woman's perspective, where two individuals may have a fault or issue. And you can, let's say we're going to use an example of two women, two sisters or cousins may have had some issue, relationship, could be one borrowed money, someone says something to each other. It could be anything, and especially with family, the dynamics could easily happen. Difficult dynamics can easily happen. So, but what happens is that it tends to tear up family in terms of children getting involved. Children don't get to play, the cousins don't get to play, and what have you. And it affects the wider circle of and it affects the wider circle of your dynamics within your family, and also complicate forgiveness. How can personal grievances pull family members apart
Mm.
from making reconciliation, and thus making it more complex than what it should be? And sometimes it could be something very small. And to them, it may not be small. And when you say that, obviously, some people may the parties involved may be upset about it because you minimize in their view. They feel that you're minimizing it, but you're not. We're trying to focus it from a big grand scale. We see families not even getting together for holidays. No, you can't come over to the house during the summer and the kids don't play. All these other things. But how can personal grievances can pull family members apart? And what can we do to do better, I should say?
Mm.
Ms. Walston, I'll start with you.
Let's see. So I guess in my experiences, most grievances in families happen usually because of either financial, bad secrets, or just opposing people because of their ideas and belief. I guess for me, the only way that you can mend these relationships is to learn how to communicate. But a lot of these families, after all these generations, basically need therapy because people don't know how to communicate their needs, their wants, and their feelings. They need to be okay with kind of like putting it on the table. Everybody's got to learn to sit in it, and sometimes you have to sit in it together. We get upset with a family member quicker than we get upset with people out in the street for just anything. We don't understand forgiveness because we've gone through generations of trauma. Um, and sometimes it's the only time people get back is when somebody passes away or there's an event that's so tragic that has to bring the family back together. Um, we can do better if we learn how to communicate. We can do better if we understand the family system and dynamic, how the family is supposed to operate. What does the family look like? The family does not look like it did before years ago. Now our families are blended. We are in different cultures. We have different beliefs. We believe in different things. So it's things like this and resources that help us learn about what to do with our family. And I'm just a big, family therapy, family counseling, just sitting in it.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Ms. James?
I agree with Ms. Walston. Oftentimes with family conflict, it is always deeper. It's usually not trivial, and which is why minimize or attempting to minimize it breeds a lot of anger and resentment. Um, Families tend to grow up together, and a dynamic is established um, early on. Some people may resent that. Some people may find that those experiences were unresolved, and so they carry it with them instead of dealing with it in the moment, for whatever reason. Maybe they are not allowed to. Maybe they don't feel like they have the support of their family to explain their feelings. Um, and so when they do have a smaller issue down the line, the you know the the previous feelings resurface. So for them, um, it really isn't small because they've never been able to resolve it. The initial grievance. And a lot of people don't even realize that's what it is.
Mm.
So if you don't realize that's what it is and you're just pissed, then it's hard to articulate why. And then it becomes, oh, you always doing too much anyway, or you always this and that anyway. And that can absolutely derail any hope of reconciliation because now you're further isolated. And so then people will just cut off contact because I'm pretty sure I've said self-preservation in the past, but
It still comes to that.
family, family conflict. I don't know that it's possible to keep it localized unless you resolve it immediately. So if you don't mediate as soon as possible, then it is going to trickle down to, I don't want my kids playing with their kids. It's going to trickle because they don't want to see you. And so now you've got the kids not necessarily knowing why, but I can't play with so and so. And then it's, they overhear things. And then all of a sudden it's, they're fighting on the playground because your mommy made my mommy mad. And I don't like you anyway. And all of this other foolishness. But like you said, things do end up resolving itself. Not resolving itself, but things do get put aside for, for instances like funerals and things like that. But I do feel like mediation can help if a neutral party is mediating, not if, if you feel like there's bias there, then it's going to be difficult to resolve it. And if people aren't willing to be honest about their feelings or understand their feelings in order to articulate their feelings, then you're going to have a hard time getting to the root cause of conflict within a family.
No problem. Shoot, lost Miss Silk. Sorry, Miss Silk. If you can hear or what have you, please join back in. Miss Swain.
That takes me back to my example with myself and my son. I think family conflicts are based on perception, again, i.e. myself and my son, understanding that, the lack of communication where he placed the blame on me as it being my fault versus saying, well, hey, I'm just bad at communicating. Because I remember him saying something to the effect, well, this is how I treat my friends, but I'm not your friend, I'm your mother. You have to decide how to engage with your family without it becoming a personal bias. Engage with anyone without it becoming a personal bias. And if it is a personal bias, then it's something that should be put on the table so that communications now are open to discuss, well, why is it? Why are we here? Why are we at this point? And I'm not just saying it in terms of myself and my son. I'm saying it in terms of anyone, be it at work, in a personal relationship, in a business relationship, in a familial relationship. We have to be able to address what is perceived as being the cause or the root cause, because the root cause, again, can just be one-sided, not the other person not knowing what the problem is. The problem cannot be addressed and it will never be solved. So being able to come to the table collectively or just between the two people that are involved is paramount in order to address what the situation is. We can have fault finding all day long, pointing fingers all day long. We can blame all day long, but that does not get to the bottom of the problem. Tell me what the bias is before we get too far into blaming whomever and then cutting off the communications. As I said, 20 plus years was too long for me not to have communications with my son. And that was based on a perception that he had. His perception, unfounded, was like, all right, well, it turns out it's me. I'm just not good at communicating. You know, there has to be a way without um I don't want to get into a fault finding or a blaming kind of thing or anything like that, who toward whomever it may be, but we have to be able to sit down as adults, if we call ourselves adults, because again, there are a lot of old people chronologically and not mature in mindset, who don't know how to come to the table with stuff, but are
Gotcha.
quick to blame other people for what's going on in their lives. It's a bias. So unload that bias, dissect it. Once you've dissected it individually, then put it on the table for others to understand where you're coming from. That's my
Understood.
take on it.
Mm-hmm. Miss James had to step out, but you know, she thank you very much, Miss James, for participating in the conversation. I appreciate it. Miss Silk, did you hear the question? I know there was some technical difficulties. Did you get the question? Uh-oh.
Yes, I got it, and I agree with everything that all of the queens said. The only part I wouldn't add anything differently other than the other part is silence listening, because I think sometimes the dynamics can't be repaired because everyone wants to talk and defend instead of listening to the other person, and don't realize that you don't have a right to tell me how I feel. You
Mhm.
don't have a right to tell me if I feel offended. You have a right to hear what I say. Um and then let's dialogue about that. And I think that's the major thing. I think that with family dynamics has become so close and so personal, we won't listen to each other because we're looking to defend. We take it as a personal attack um on each other. And one of the things that I said, and I can attribute this just even to my own family dynamics, I think that somewhere along the line when we lost the big mamas and the big papas, the whole family dynamics changed. Because I know, and I've said this several times to my own family, I know if Nana and Papa was still alive, or even if my dad was alive, that this crap would not be going on,
Mm.
right? Because they would pull everybody to the carpet and you wouldn't have a choice. And whether we all got into a room and we knocked out, dragged out, but when we left there, everybody would be hugging and on one accord. And I think that's what it is. I think that in this need to be modernized and to move forward, some of those family values got dropped by, the wayside. We talked about that because when I was a kid, it didn't matter what you did for Thanksgiving, but at 3 o'clock everybody was at Nana's house. Yeah, everybody was coming in the door from different things, and the family sat down and they ate together. um the night before, the family got together and we cooked together. Somebody was working with Nana snapping peas. I was the baker, so I was in the kitchen, and stuff. It's a lot of that stuff dropped by the wayside. And so, like the queen said, sometimes family has forgotten how to be family. They think that family is only when you need a few extra dollars, or you need to borrow money from somebody, or you got a problem that you need to solve, or you need a ride from here to there, or whatever and stuff, just a check-in. And sometimes you end up getting more from people who have no blood like yours in their vein, like just a friend or a sister. So I think if that would be the only thing that I would add, that to listen to each other, and to remember that one of the things that both queens said, tomorrow's not promised to anybody, right? None of us know the minute, hour, day, or time. You would hate to be the last time you said something to somebody, be the last time you said something to somebody. No need to come into the funeral crying, falling all over the casket
Exactly.
and stuff now, when you had all of these opportunities to rectify something. Sometimes it's so simple. If it's something so egregious, I can understand, but it goes back to Miss Walston, that especially in our village, we have to learn to start reaching out to resources. If we can't mediate these things ourselves, going to counseling, going to family mediation. Those things have always been so taboo in our village. You know, what goes on in our house stays in our house, and we don't want nobody in our business, and don't be trying to make me look bad or whatever. And I think that some of that unchecked hurt, because we carry around those bags and not unpack them, and then we pass that on generationally to our children and our children's children and our grandchildren and everything. And it's a shame when you have relatives that don't even know, like cousins. And I have nieces I don't even know. Okay. I'm not embarrassed to say it. If they see me in the street, they wouldn't even know it. I mean, I felt so bad that I had a nephew that was recently killed here in the city. And this young man wait on me in the store like several times, and I had no clue that this was my nephew until his funeral. And that's sad.
Understand. Understand. So while you mention that, I look forward to getting $100 from each one of y'all today, tomorrow, Friday to Friday
The check
payday.
is in the mail. I mailed it.
Okay. Okay. At least I figured I asked. So I thank y'all for this conversation because it needed to be had, and it offered various levels of illumination. Hopefully, not just to me, but for everybody. And obviously, it could be difficult or confusing, but it's when you have these conversations, a level of understanding, bond, trust, clarity, and wisdom can always be had. So I appreciate all of you. Before we go, real quickly, the subject of the days, just to get a couple of thoughts, because people have asked, sending me messages left and right. There's the recent revelation of Mr. Sean Combs and his exploits, not too much more different, if not worse than Epstein or what have you, and all these other different things. I have thoughts on it, but I'll leave it to you, Queens. Miss Raw Silk, since you deal with this on an everyday basis and things like that, he called you yesterday to get your thoughts before he turned himself in. Wanted your thoughts first.
You stupid. I could care less. Right
Okay.
now, my energy is focusing on this election and who's getting ready to be in office. Puffy needs to do whatever he needs to do. He got to answer to somebody higher than me. So I don't have a whole lot of energy to put into this. I don't care how much he stockpiled baby oil and all of that other stuff, because realistically, I stockpile soap powder. So maybe somebody thinks, I mean, it's just like crazy to me. I just find it amazing that this foolishness always comes up right when there's an election and something important that we should be focusing on. We get this distraction about Puffy. This investigation has been going on for a long time. We knew it was coming. We knew this thing was coming when they went after Bill Cosby, for God's sake. So nobody's exempt. And as soon as they finish with Puffy, they're already working on the next person, which I believe is probably going to be Jay-Z or whatever. So like I don't care. I don't care. Right now, Project 2025 and our people getting out to vote. I care as much about that as I do Trump's fake assassination attempts.
Say it.
Yeah, I'm laughing because you already knew Silk where I was going, that it don't matter. I'm sorry, it matters. I don't want to be dismissive of anybody that's been hurt, at fault, whatever. And I'm not crimes allegedly, whatever, supposedly or true or not. At the end of the day, it's a valid issue, but it's being used as a distraction. And I want people to recognize the tool. Say it again.
All of it's a distraction.
Right. And it's being too. So don't
fake assassination, and I'm gonna call it what I say as I see it. From the fake assassinations to Puffy, all of it's a distraction. I personally don't see the point of, I get it. He's in trouble. I'm with sis. He's in trouble. But at the end of the day, we got bigger things on the table when it comes to this election in terms of Black and brown people, women, LGBTQ, children, voters' rights, education, agriculture. Puffy and his stockpile of baby oil is like, okay, Put it on the street and sell it.
Yeah. Miss Walston, quickly.
Real quick, nothing. I got nothing. I'm sorry. I agree with the queens. I'd rather have a conversation about this fool than to have a conversation about Mr. Diddy. I need to make sure that people are at the voting line voting for my sister Kamala Harris. That's what I want to make sure, that people are out registering their children who are 18. That's what I care about. I care about not hearing about somebody eating dogs and cats for another day on TikTok. I want my black president, and I want my female black president right now. That's it.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
That's all I want. I want to have a party for 30 days.
Right. Now here's the reason why I went down this track. And it goes along, and I know some people may not see it the way I'm posing it, but it's the aspect of accountability and forgiveness. Okay. And here's how I'm tying in it. Okay. Now, the accountability has been, there's a lot of people we're seeing right now, whether whoever you decide to vote for, who you feel is right or wrong, there's a lot of hurt that goes on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, in order to, and Silk and I, we talked about this, there's so much hurt within our communities that we can't seem to forget and move on. And dealing with what we have with Kamala, Harris, a VP. I'm sorry, let me address it correctly. That there are women who, for whatever reason, for whatever issues, can't get past forgiveness. And I'm seeing this as a reflection within our communities, in our everyday lives, outside of the election, but in our everyday relationships, how we deal with people. And from a personal relationship, family, whatever, we are not learning to have accountability and forgiveness. And it's affecting on how we make our decisions, a la how we addressing the political spectrum, how we dealing the entertainment spectrum, everything else. Sadly, accountability will do. I promise you that there are people who've been more involved in this scandal with the Diddy versus the election aspect.
Of course.
And that's where accountability and forgiveness, whatever you may have feel, someone may have hurt you or wronged you, whatever the case may be, are you willing to forgive and to be able to say, get to the next level and look at the long-term goal?
Are we still talking about Diddy, or are we talking about the election?
All of it. Well, I'm using that as I brought those two.
For me, neither one have. Diddy hasn't done anything that I think I need to forgive him for. Forgiveness, I think, now is on him and whoever, the wrongs he has done to them. In terms of Kamala Harris, speaking as a Black woman and having seen this all across social media, which for me is the most and this is where we go back to, helping each other fix your crown.
Mm-hmm.
For
right.
us as Black women to engage in this perpetual propaganda of her getting where she is because she was constantly on her knees, I take offense to that.
Right.
I personally take offense. I personally take offense to that because I personally take offense to it because when the story first came out in terms of her, even when she was vice president, the story has been vetted and vetted and vetted and vetted. It's been vetted 1,000 times because it is a story dating back to when she was district attorney or the prosecuting attorney for San Francisco. Mayor Brown himself has said, we were friends. Yes, we were in a relationship, but that has nothing to do with her success from prosecuting attorney to district attorney to senator to now VP. It has nothing to do with it. Everyone is like, she got there only because she was on her knees. And the thing that I find offensive is Black people are running with this foolishness.
Mhm.
Who
Right,
doesn't want a glass house?
right. I got you. My my point with it was not so much in terms of the did and the that I should have answered it correctly. My point was about how we have to take account in our daily lives and how we deal with each other and friends, business, family, your own your own business, how we handle forgiveness, how we handle accountability affects how we handle things outside externally, such as politics, such as entertainment, such as anything else. I'm just using those two samples of because that's the story news.
I hear you,
And
but
how
again, neither one of those require my forgiveness.
no, no,
It's
it was
time.
not.
I think it's time we turn the. I'm with her. Turn the page on whatever it is that happened. Diddy ain't paying none of my bills. If he was, then that would be a
No,
different story.
I wasn't
So,
saying about
no,
having
no, no. I
forgiveness.
hear you. I hear you. Diddy's not paying any of my bills. Neither is she. But if we're going to look at it from the political perspective or the entertainment perspective, none of these people have the power until they become president of the United States. None of these people have the power to change what's happening overall in the United States. Forgiveness, if forgiveness is to be extended, then I think we need to start way, way back to, and I'm going back. I think we need to go back as far as slavery. If there's to be any accountability or any form of forgiveness or whatever, we've been carrying a burden far too long as Black people. We need to start forgiving each other
Mhm.
first. We need to
That's
become accountable to each other first. Slavery has been uh, a dome hanging over our heads for centuries. We cannot forgive for as people. We cannot forget some. We can forgiving being able to forgive should not mean that we forget. Let me put it that way. Being able to forgive does not mean that we should forget. But if we're going to forgive, then yes, we need to start with slavery because there's a whole lot of forgiveness that needs to be done from us as Black people to move forward. We're carrying it. We're carrying that dogma over our heads and inflicting it generation after generation after generation after generation on each generation that comes after us.
I understand, totally understand. Thank y'all, everybody, so very much. Is getting to our witching hour, as they say. Thank everybody so very much for joining in the conversation and things. Tough conversations, um, difficult conversations for some out there whoever's listening. And I thank y'all so very much for spending time with us. And if we missed a question, missed something, or there may be some other concerns that you want to bring up, please feel free to put them in the comments, send us an email, because we will definitely address them, and we try to go back and comment on everybody's thoughts and concerns. I'm going to close out and everybody quickly for a minute. Uh, put do two things. Make sure for those who may just come on board, introduce how they can contact you, and what is something about yourself, real quickly in less than a minute, that you had to learn to have forgiveness for. Miss Walston.
I'm on Facebook. Something more. I don't know, Stephen. You caught me off. I don't know. I cannot answer that quickly because I'd have to think. But I know it's probably a lot of stuff. Okay, that's my answer.
Okay, no problem. All right, Raw Silk.
I'm on Facebook as well. And I agree with Miss Walton. I could think of a lot of stuff, but if I had to pinpoint one stuff. I forgive myself for staying in a toxic relationship way too
There you go.
long. Now that I have been happily married for 17 years, I can truly see how I sacrifice me just to be in a relationship. To say I have a man to make other people happy. Why are you single? Why, you should have kids by now, blah, blah, blah. So if I had to forgive myself for anything, I think that would be one of the things.
All right. Miss Swain.
Um, I'm on Facebook as Nanette Rhodesia Swain. I'm on Instagram as Rhodesia60. In terms of I'm with the other sisters, there's a whole lot up in there, but more so with Silk. I've learned to forgive myself. I have learned, and I'm still learning to forgive myself for staying in toxic relationships, including with family.
Understand. I forgive myself for not getting into Bitcoin sooner. No. I have to forgive myself, and anybody who knows an ounce of me, I have to forgive myself that I can't be as demanding of myself and be mad at myself because I can't get something done and act like I'm a human robot. And accept the fact that I'm not that, a robot. That some things you just can't get everything done, no matter how much you meticulously plan or do things and stuff like that. And I can't get angry at myself because I couldn't get it. Not saying I don't accomplish things, that's not the case, but you can't be so demanding of yourself, and then it takes you out of form. So it happens. But again, thank everybody so very much for joining our show. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email us at enliven, ENLIVENGM @gmail.com. Also, it takes some additional support financially and time to make these things happen for the show. And if anybody has any additional time and resources to share, please feel free to utilize our Cash App. I am MRLP. Our Zelle is our email, and our PayPal, enlivengm @gmail.com. Whatever you may feel comfortable. I got to buy new do bags for Mrs. Swain. Silk needs new hair coloring. Miss Swain, Miss Walson says I order dinner. So these things cost, and I don't have it anymore. So I need some assistance. Everybody, thank you so very kindly for your time. I appreciate it, and may y'all have a great and blessed day. Y'all stay with me. But everybody, thank you so very
Good
much, and
night,
we'll talk to you
Queen.
soon.
Good night. Good night.